All right, so my face-to-face students, did you have any other questions I can help with?
It says like submit your sheets. What exactly was?
Okay, so week 8, so the file to submit your sheets. That is the sheets if you are doing your final project, but you know what? It might keep you from getting to your post-test. So I'm going to make a note to myself that I will email Learning House like as soon as we stop this live broadcast and ask them to remove that stipulation. Online students. Also, on students, if you are listening, they're with the grades for week 7. I've already graded them, but it should have been out of 22 and it was out of 8. So they fixed it so that it's now out of 22, but all of your grades are still calculating as if they were out of 8. So I'm going to have to go back through and manually tell it to recalculate all your grades. So please don't freak out about your low grades this week. Like I said, if you want to recalculate it yourself, just take whatever grade you got and divide it by 8 instead, and that will be fairly close to what you will get when I fix it.
So for the final, we use on the pre-test, is that correct?
Yes, yes. For the final, you use the same sheets that you used on the pre-test. Okay. I can get the screen going. Okay.
Well, I had one of that.
Trying to get the laptop going. Try to come work your magic again. I don't understand what I'm not. Oh, there we go. Never mind. Yeah, all you had to do is stand up. Congratulations. Easiest IT fix ever. Okay. Questions I can answer before we get started. Yes, Robert.
For the, well, this is kind of a two-part. For the final and for our next quiz, are we required to have the precision tree download because my trial ended? So if so, I'd have to go to the library to do the test.
Okay, for and the quiz, are you required to have precision tree? I believe the answer is, or for the post-test, I believe the answer to that is yes. You need to be able to interpret some of them, if nothing else. So I suppose that was willing to print off the sheets for you that had precision tree. That could work. You don't actually need precision tree to work problems in the test, but you would need it to interpret some of the problems from the test. Does that make sense? I know on my computer that if I don't have precision tree loaded, one of them, it just, none of the numbers make any sense. Like it
yeah. But I could do it in the library, but I was just asking for any students who don't have access to the library.
Yeah, your trial ended before the class ended, the case with a lot of you?
Mine's like 2 years. Good for 2 years.
Yours is good for 2 years, and yours ended. What? How did you buy yours?
From the link you had.
From the link. Where did you get yours?
There's different options.
Well, okay. So what option did you select for the length of time for the book? Right, you could select the length of time you had access to the book, and like the earliest one was like February. Right.
Yeah, I think mine's for like February or a little bit later after that.
And your trial's still good.
Yeah, my trial's still Friday.
Okay. I know I had a conversation with the publisher earlier about this, and they told me it was fine. I'm so sorry. Yeah, but I would say that would be the easiest solution if you have access to it. You don't really need a way to be able to print and view the sheets without the numbers zeroing out. Dalton.
Do we have to build any models?
You have to build models, but you don't need to build models with like EMV is good enough. If you know how to calculate an EMV manually, you could do it fairly easily without precision tree if you wanted to. You do have a decision tree model. But you can do it easily enough without precision tree if you choose. I know Steele had a question about the final project. I can go ahead and address that too. Steele was asking where to get he's asking about resources for the final project. Let me show you my favorite thing. Online students, let me share my computer with you guys so you can see it too. Okay, students don't really need to see me on screen on the projector either. All right, there we go. So my favorite way to search for resources is to use Google Scholar. You can actually link Southeastern's library to Google Scholar, and then it will show you any that to articles that Southeastern owns. I did a quick search for overuse of analytics or something along that line to find to find one article that supports and one article that contradicts in some way. I mean, it doesn't have to contradict your full thesis, but it should provide a different viewpoint. Yes, Dalton.
Like, I went to the database and found both of my articles.
Okay.
Like, for the one that was against it, I found one that was like, analytics is not intuitive. It's not like human, it can't use human intuition. So, like.
I was saying analytics can't use human intuition? Okay. I Steele had asked if you can use non-scholarly resources. I would say if they're government, something that has a good reputation for being super credible, the answer is yes. I would rather you not use that are less credible though. Okay. I think if you go into Google Scholar, I love Google Scholar because like instead of searching one database at a time, you can like search them all at once. Probably save me a couple years on my dissertation, to be really honest with you. It's a phenomenal resource. Find some stuff if you. It is. Do you want me to show you how to do it? Let's see, I think it's my profile. I show somebody every couple months, and it takes me. Is it settings? The library link somewhere. And that's not it. Okay, try that again. The library is probably a better shot. Not it either. Let's see, what is it?
Oh, it was under, I found it.
Where's it?
Little, under settings on that.
It is under settings on that? Okay.
So it's the little wheel that was in the upper right-hand corner that you had open.
Here, oh, here. Okay, thank you.
It's on the side.
There we go. Yep. Okay, so if you go to, let's see, oh, you guys can't see it because this is too wide for the projector. Okay, so if you click on, go over here to settings, library links, I have added all of the options for Southeastern University. If you have other libraries, affiliations with other schools or libraries or essentially public libraries, if they're on here, but if you're from another county, it's potential that you could link that library to. We'll search them all at once for you. No, it's saver when you're doing research. Right? I am not kidding when I say I think it probably saved me a year or more on my dissertation. So that's my suggestion for finding your articles for your paper. Any questions on that? This is one I pulled up actually I thought was pretty interesting. All right, so are there other questions? Online students, do you all have any questions? So can you chat with me tonight? Where'd my, oh, there we go. And I never pushed share with you guys, so sorry about that. All right. The problem with using that chat, as I'm seeing, is that I can't leave that screen up. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave this screen over here so that I can see if you all email me. All right, so online students, you guys can email me if you want to contribute, have a question or something along that line. And we will try to work out the chat at one point or some point. I'm not sure why that's not working. Also, next question, come to class next week. No, anybody? Are you messing with me, Augie? Because I'll come sit with you if you need me to. You're all right. All right. Did I see another question? Did you have? Did I want to? I'm gonna miss you guys so much. I don't know what I'll do with myself next week. My children will find plenty for me to do. I promise you. Dalton.
So I'm like really stressed out about the paper.
You're
I know that I did it well, but like I'm just like really stressed about how difficult you made it.
You're stressed about how difficult I made the paper?
Well, just like because like the thesis, like for me, I felt like it was one thing, but then like I'm worried that's not like the answer. Like if that makes sense.
Okay, look, guys. There were more than one direction you could go with what you thought the thesis for the book was. So I'm looking for your interpretation of the thesis of the book. I'm not necessarily looking for the author's interpretation. So if you kind of hit it in the ballpark for the thesis, you're good. Okay. What I didn't want was just a summary that kind of never hit on any main points. And then I would say, as long as it's, in the past, how I graded, as long as students hit all of the areas that they're supposed to hit, and they generally do pretty well on it. Okay. It wasn't supposed to be a big point of stress for you. When I've had students not do as well, which I mean, it didn't matter as much at that point because it was extra credit. It was because they left sections off. They didn't do article reviews. They didn't clearly identify a thesis. They didn't, they didn't give supporting evidence. I mean, it was like blatantly, you couldn't have read the directions well and left that off and thought you were going to get full credit. Okay. Said it wasn't. It was supposed to be an assignment that helped you learn. It wasn't supposed to be exceptionally difficult or something that I was going to grade ridiculously hard.
I just didn't know if there was like a specific because I took away something from predictive analytics that maybe like other people didn't.
Yeah,
so
that's okay. If you kind of if a different theme from the book spoke to you and that's what you picked as your thesis, it's okay. Now, if you tell me your thesis has something to do with and something completely unrelated that I can tell you didn't read the book, that would be an issue. But yeah, as long as you're in the right ball field, you're good. Still. Not even quoting, but as long as I see you on topic with the book. Okay, it's pretty it can be pretty obvious pretty quickly when somebody doesn't like read the book and then they try to do those things. And like I do read your papers. I had a professor in my doctoral program. I'm not sure that they read my papers because none of their comments ever actually had anything to do with the papers that I wrote. And so I don't know if you've ever had that experience or not. I literally thought about putting a paragraph in there about, unicorns and rainbows and sprinkles just to see if, and I didn't. I was too chicken to do it. I should have, though. Kind of regret that. Just because I was so curious as to whether or not this person actually read my papers. But I'm definitely not that professor. If you can tell from the feedback that I give you on your weekly analysis, I read your work. Okay. If you put in a paragraph about rainbows and sprinkles and I'm going to say, what's this? It might be very funny if the rest of your paper was good, but that's not really an invitation either. So I don't want 20 paragraphs on that, okay? All right. Are there other questions? Anything else I can help you with? All right. To do tonight is, again, rather than just going through and showing you how to create models, I'm going to go through the 3 regression models that you all were creating this week, and we're going to talk about the interpretation of those models. I think that that's going to be most helpful for you this week. If you see me run another one, I can, but did anybody find that helpful? No. Yeah, I'm getting a yes. Mostly I'm getting no. So let me do the other first, and then we'll see where we're at, with time, and if anybody wants that. Like I said, I don't mind doing it, but I just didn't think it'd be all that helpful. All right, so let's start in order. So here is 1412. Okay. Here is the regression for 1412. And so let's start. So the first thing I'm going to look at for my regression is this ANOVA table. Why is this the first thing I look at? Yeah, because I have to see if the F is significant, because if my F value, if my P value here indicates that this test is not significant, then the model's worthless. You don't trust any of the rest of it. That's your interpretation. F statistic indicates the model is not significant. You might go ahead and give the rest of the statistics, but you don't trust it. And so that's why you always actually start here, even though it's not the first thing on the output. So in this case, is my model significant? Significant. Yeah, the p-value is less than 0.05. Okay. All right. So one of the next things I would look at is my R square. My R square is this 92.65%. What does that tell me? Yeah, there's a high correlation between the independent variables and the dependent variables, but specifically it tells me that the independent variables explain 92.65% of the change in the dependent variable. Okay, that's pretty high. It tells me this model's pretty good. Next thing that I would look at are these p-values for the individual inputs on the regression. All right, so do you see any here that give you concern? Yeah, the intercept, the constant. Now, you can't take out the constant. So you just, in this case, with the significant model and everything else, you would just have to live with it. If one of these was insignificant, a lot of times you would at least consider taking it out and rerunning the regression without it. Okay, but you can't take out the constant. It's sort of important. And the rest of these are significant.
The constant is negative.
What happens if the constant is negative? Then, so that happened in the case of the bidding. So that doesn't really make sense that if there's no bidding and no, something's 0 years old and there's no bidders, that it would sell for negative $1,300, right? So, you kind of say the constant's important because it's part of the regression equation, but it's not necessarily giving you useful information in and of itself. Does that make sense? Okay.
Is the lower and upper like the values where they should range?
The lower and the upper, yeah. Actually, that's a good point. So the lower confidence interval and the upper confidence interval tell you that within 95% chance, there's a 95% chance that the range for the products are going to be between these two numbers. So the range for the constant is negative 1,400 to 2,300, which is why it's saying that this constant isn't necessarily overly reliable. One thing that, like in the case of the bidding, that's probably telling you, you would want to, your data itself may be very, very linear. Of an auction, if there's 0 buyers and 0 thing, it may get to a point that it's not so linear and it curves, the line curves. Does that make sense? And so that could be why the constant is kind of wacky.
Is the multiple R, is it the square root of the R squared?
Yeah, we don't really do anything with the multiple R square. I mean, multiple R. We use the R square. And okay. All right. So see, this is I know what I was doing there. Okay. Actually gave the lower end, calculated the lower end of the confidence interval for some of them. Now that's what I was doing there to check some numbers. So given the data in your problem, or your prompt for your write-up, that should have been what you came up with, okay? If you were manufacturing 268, 875, 376, and 954, you should have come up with 97,000 and change. Some of you came up with slightly different answers due to different rounding. I wasn't concerned about that, as long as you were close. The other thing you'd want to actually make sure you write out anytime you are writing a report on a regression is you want to give the regression equation. Statistic, you give your R square, you discuss p-values for the individual inputs, and you give your overall regression equation. Okay. You may discuss standard error or confidence interval if it seems relevant for some reason. There are questions on this one? Things you'd still like to understand a little bit better? See, check my online students. Do you guys have any questions? I'm not seeing anything. Oh, Mitchell. Oh, my emails don't have a link to the session. That's not good. Okay, no wonder there's nobody there. Let me fix that for them really quick. I'm actually a little concerned it may have been removed because I saw it on. Ah, what happens when you get in a hurry? Okay. Did I send it? I did send it. Yep, I put it on there. It concerns me a little that I may have removed it. I've seen it do that before. Okay, well, if nothing else, I can watch it online later. So let's keep going. So that was 1212. Again, did anybody have any other questions on this? All right, let's go on to 1214. The auction. Now this one's interesting. Okay. Let's have a look at this one. Well, okay, never mind. Let's talk about the key numbers first. Okay, so what did we look at first? What? The p-value of what? The ANOVA of the F statistic. So is our overall model significant? Yes. How much of the variance in the dependent variables explained by the independent variables? 89%. Yeah, 89.27%. Okay. How are my p-values for my inputs? Yep, they're all really good. So let's talk about, and so then here's the prediction. So if you were wondering, Here was the predictions you should have come up with for those is 9,986 and 6,456. Okay. If you wanted to use your confidence interval numbers and calculate a lower and an upper, you could be fairly well, you could be 95% sure that I think it was the first one, the flute, the 350 and 80, or was that telescope? Whichever one was 350 and 80, you could be fairly sure that would sell from between $7,500 to $1,200 in change for both of those. Okay. So that's one place an upper and a lower limit might be valuable. If you were writing to a client, maybe advising them as to whether or not to sell these items, they might want to know, you know, not just we think it'll sell for this much, but like what's the range? Anyway. All right, I'm hearing some online students join us, I think. I don't actually mind leaving your mics on from my end, but if you will mute them from your end, unless you have a question, you can turn them on and ask a question because it doesn't seem like our chat's working well. So, all right. So,
Why did it boot it? Come on now. Are you serious? Fucking serious. Oh my goodness.
Oh, there you go. There's my microphone. I wonder, has my microphone been muted the whole time? There we go. Are you talking when the screen does that? Yeah, it's just strange. Okay. Right? Okay. Ourselves. So we've gone over the F statistics. So this thing is significant because this p-value is below 0.05. For those just joining us online, if your F statistic or your F statistic is the first thing that you look at, because if this S statistic is over 0.05, then you throw out the whole model. It's no good. Okay. All right. Your R square. Okay. Let's look at so R square would be the next thing we look at. So this R square tells us what?
The dependent variable is explained by the independent.
Yes, it tells us that 58% of the dependent variable is explained by the change in the independent variables. In this case, let's look at the p-values for the test. So do you see any problems here? Yeah, test 2 is no good. Okay, so that p-value is too high. Now, you want to rerun the thing without test 2? Let's do it. So the part 3 was actually just to run it again with seniority and the average, but let me run it without test 2. Actually, need to move that column, I think. I don't think that works. I want to try to move it, but here, I'll do this. Actually, I'm just going to
You can copy it and then
yeah,
you can, when you go to insert, you can insert and paste.
and then I'm going to delete. Okay. So now if I rerun, oh, I don't know, so I keep doing that. And you know what? I don't have that added installed again, so let me do that. I think we did the same thing last week, right? And still. All right. All right, so data analysis and regression. And remember, X explains Y. So my Y variable is what? The performance rating, dependent variable. And then my X variables, I've got 3 of them. They are seniority, test 1, and test 3. All right, and then I need to make sure I select this thing that says labels, because otherwise it's going to try to include my labels as part of the numbers for the regression, which is going to throw it all off, or at least a little bit off. So some of you that get really close to the numbers, but you don't quite have it, you may have an error with how you dealt with your labels. All right, it can output to a new worksheet, that's fine. All right. So here's our new regression. Our F, is it significant? Yeah, it's quite significant. So, and again, I know the number looks weird. If we go and change that to a number instead of general, okay, we're good.
So the smaller the better.
Yeah, the smaller, the more likely it is that you've picked up on phenomenon and not just noise. Okay. All right, 58.1. Less than this one. It's a little bit less, yeah. You want to know why that is? only go up. So if I threw 20 more things into this regression equation that had nothing to do with the dependent variable, and we knew they had nothing to do with the dependent variable, my R-squared would still go up at least a little bit for every single one. Possible you would get something like we looked at the spurious correlations last week, where I found a spurious correlation like Nicolas Cage appearing in films and people drowning in pools. So yeah, Dalton.
In the newest edition of predictive analytics, like crazy stuff like that. Yeah,
Dalton said for online students in the newest edition of predictive analytics, there's a whole section on that.
Like one was like the #1 team in college loses the game, like domestic violence goes up in the area or something like that.
Well, that might not be completely spurious. I don't know. Men kind of angry, that's probably unfair to men. Anyway. All right. So our R-squared did go down a little bit, but that's okay. It didn't go down very much and like I said, that's to be expected. And so that's one reason why you don't just you don't take like 30 numbers and just throw them together in a regression. Significant. You want to keep your regression numbers like kind of lower, probably, 5 to 7 things at most if you can. Because again, otherwise you risk the chance of getting something that's significant when it isn't. And then you want to make sure that there's a good theory tie to what your dependent and your dependent variables. Yes, Dalton.
For standard error, do we want that higher or lower?
You prefer your standard errors to be a bit lower. Okay. Yeah, standard errors, a lower standard error means that the points that aren't on the predicted line, they're not as far off. That makes sense.
What does that F stand for? Like the one right next to your significance, or like the MS?
This one?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, what this F stands for is that's your F statistics. That's the one I was saying you could go look up in a chart. You could cross-reference the degrees of freedom and the significance level that you were looking for as a minimum to see if you were above that number. So that's how they used to have to do it, is look it up in charts before we had computers that did more for us with touches of a button. You used to have to do a lot more of this by hand. Can you imagine? Those equations are ugly. Yeah. Okay, so let's keep going with our interpretation. I'm gonna put all these into numbers so they're easier to read. It's just a pain. Okay, there we go. All right, so ignore non-significant intercept because you can't get rid of that. But actually, it's better than it was, right? Because it's 0.18 now, and it was 0.27 before. So that's actually gotten better. Okay, by throwing out the bad data. All right, so the other two are still significant. Okay, it changes the coefficients a bit, but hopefully it gets you a touch more accurate with your predictions by throwing out that number. And then I used a different program than they did too. So my output looks just a little bit different than the first ones that were run with the amended by your book. But all the same data is still there. By the way, what I told you about with the F statistic, you do the same thing with the T statistic. You would cross-reference it in a chart. And then if your T-stat was above the minimum for that problem, then it was significant at that level. And if it wasn't, it wasn't. Dalton.
So the quiz this week will be along the same lines as the quiz last week,
Mm-hmm.
question-wise?
Yeah, it'll be very, very similar to the quiz question-wise. Make sure you're able to plug numbers into your regression and come up with a prediction. Okay. There are questions on this? I'll throw it out to face-to-face first, and then I'll open the mics for the online. Face-to-face, are there any questions?
Can you explain to us, like, what happens when the p-value is too low or too high?
Okay, p-value, what happens when the p-value is too low or too high? P-value can't be too low. Okay, the lower it is, the more likely it is that you've picked up on an actual phenomenon and not just noise. It can be too high. If the p-value is over 0.05 for the overall model, you don't trust your model. least that's the general rule of thumb. Whatever, look, you don't run the regression and then decide what your p-value should be. You like decide before the regression that you're comfortable with, like, you know, you're comfortable at 95% chance, or you're comfortable with a 90% chance, is occasionally used in social research. Sometimes if it's really important, they go to like, it has to be within a 99% chance, but you want to like decide that before you run your equation so it reduces some bias, okay? But if it's outside of the bounds of whatever you set, again, 95 tends to be the gold standard, which would be a significance of 0.05. Then you basically, you would give the numbers from your regression. You would state what they are, but you would say it's non-significant. You cannot trust the data from it. If it is over 0.05, you would generally choose not to trust the data from the regression, okay? And then if these p-values down here are above 0.05, you would generally rerun the regression equation without those. Now, again, what's going to happen when you take items out of your regression equation? What's going to happen to your R-square? It's going to go down a little bit. But that's not a bad thing. All right, I'm going to switch over to the online. Okay. Are there any questions from the online students? Going once, going twice, not hearing any. All right. Are there questions about homework, other homework?
Yes.
Okay.
Can be another chapter?
Can it be another chapter? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well, okay. Let's, any more questions about chapter 14? I mean, I think we beat it to death at this point. All right, yeah, we can go on to other chapters.
Chapter 9.
Chapter 9, okay. Let's find my... Let's find my email. There we go. Okay, Mitchell needs help with 948, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. All right, so 948. So 20% chance that an earthquake will occur. So let's see if these inverses are correct. Actually, 948. Inverses are, yeah, I didn't think they looked right. Okay. Okay, she predicts an earthquake, and the prediction is accurate 95% of the time. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so Mitchell, your basic form on your base is correct. I'm thinking that we have some inverted slips. So let me do this. Let's do will occur and will not occur. Actually, let's do so predicted, because what we need here is the number of predicted and not predicted. I think that's part of the issue. That yeah, that would have been part of the issue, is you actually should have summed this one and this one. But anyway, I'm gonna just fix it here. So will occur, will not occur. Okay. And things like that down there. All right. So I'm going to take these out just for the sake of clarity. All right, so 95% of the time when she predicts an earthquake will occur. If an earthquake, she will predict no earthquake with a probability of 0.9% if an earthquake will not occur. No, I'm sorry, that should be this point. Predicted, okay. No, okay. That was right the first time. Yeah, okay, yeah, not predicted will not occur. There we go, that's right. Now, so what would be the correct inverse here? So where does our 0.05 go? Is it not predicted but will occur, or was it predicted but will not occur? Think not predicted but will occur? Okay. Let's see. And so that would make this one 0.10. Yep, and that's correct. Okay.
The second one, the multiply, the will not occur, the 0.08 and 0.72.
Yep.
How?
Okay. And that has to do with your 20%, because in that location, they think that there's a 20% chance of an earthquake happening. So this is where that 20% gets taken into account.
Yeah, I got the you will occur, but
so there, right. So will occur. So you take 0.95 and multiply that by 20%. This one, you're multiplying by the inverse of 20%. So 80%. That's how he got that. So Mitchell, you were really close. Like I said, you just swap these inverses, and I'm telling you that's hard. When I do these, that's an easy mistake to make, and I've been doing this a while. Each one and think about it. Okay. These are now correct. I think so. Josh, these are the same numbers I said yes to earlier, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I thought so. Yeah. All right. And so let's see. Does that now make the decision tree? Let's look at the structure of it. So new tree, build which plant? Okay. Mitchell, that's going to be the second problem here. Let's go through the decisions that we've got. Oh, and you did that over here. Good job. Okay, so you have hire geologists, which plant to build, and then the earthquake probability. Okay, so it's actually a bit more complex than that. But would you want to decide where to build the plant and then hire the geologist? I mean, if you've already decided where to build the plant, what's the point of the geologist? And do the geologist first. So if you flop these two numbers, hire the geologist first, and then decide which plant to build. But actually, it's not even that. This would work for the tree where you say no to the geologist. Okay, for the tree where you say yes to the geologist. Okay, so you're gonna hire a geologist, and that's gonna be a yes. We'll mark this one as a no, so you know the difference, why that tree is gonna look different, or why that part of the tree is gonna look different. So if you hire the geologist, build which plant, you have, this is still gonna be there. Okay, what is the other thing that you're going to have to factor into your decision tree if you hire the geologist? Yeah, her prediction. Just prediction, okay? So the hired geologist is still going to be one, same for both, right? That has to be the same. But this is where they branch off. So what would you do next in the tree where you hire the geologist? What's the next piece of information you would get? Anybody, can anybody tell me? What's the next piece of information you would get, or the next decision you would need to make if you hire the geologist? The prediction of what? The earthquake? The geologist prediction? Yeah, you would get her report, which contained a prediction. Now, given your prior probabilities, what's the percentage, what's the chance that she's going to predict an earthquake? Nope. You got to look at your bays on this one. The chance of a prediction for the earthquake, the chances she's going to predict earthquake are these right here, the sums, okay? So there's a 27% chance she will predict earthquake. There's a 73% chance she will predict no earthquake. All right, so now what's the next thing? Yeah, so now you're going to build the plant, whether or not an earthquake occurs. Okay. And so I believe that these, Mitchell was correctly identifying these as to these are the decisions, and then these are the chance, or the things you don't have control over, which is a good separation. And Mitchell, I will go back to my email. Do you see if you have any other questions on this I can help with? I think we should have the audio fixed at this point, I think. So. Does anybody else have another problem they want to go over? I think this was the hardest one from this week. Yes. Online students, if you have another problem you want to go over, you're welcome to go ahead and email me that. Oh, Mitchell said, I don't understand why geologist first. Sure. So the reason you would hire the geologist first is because or you have to decide whether to hire the geologist first. Because if you're going to hire the geologist, they don't actually do you any good once you've built the plant. So you're hiring the you're deciding whether or not to hire the geologist, because if you hire them, they'll give you a better sense of whether or not an earthquake is going to occur. You've already built the plant, you're already invested. It kind of doesn't matter at that point. That makes sense. I mean, it does matter, but you no longer have any control. So you want the information. If you're going to buy the information, you want the information while you still have the power to control. Information doesn't do a whole lot of good if you have no control over it, right? I hope that helps, Mitchell. Right, you don't need the geologist if you're going to build at Roy Rogers, but Roy Rogers is a lot more expensive, right? So if you're going to consider Diablo, the first thing you have to decide is geologist evaluate Diablo. Because like I said, at the point you've decided to build at Diablo, the geologist report won't do you. At the point you've decided to build at Roy Rogers, the geologist report won't change anything. You know what? I can enable your mic, I think, Mitchell, and that might work a little bit better than typing. Let's see. No, I actually don't see your mic. Are you on with Corey? Anyway, Mitchell, if you're on with Corey is the only mic I see. So if you're on with her and you want me to enable it, let me know. Other than that, you can email her. We will go ahead and move on. All right. Any other questions? Any other homework problems anybody wants to go over? And online, give you guys a minute. Face to face, anybody have anything else? Oh, I noticed something. So your list of homework problems for this week correctly identified which homework, but when you actually got into the scenarios, it gave you a different number from an old edition. I believe the test is fixed, but if for some reason the test references 1447, 1436, okay? Yeah, and Mitchell, you can keep emailing me about it. I'm thinking if you probably an aha moment on it. But again, if you're going to pay for information, you want it to be something you can act on. If it's not going to be actionable, then it's not going to do you a whole lot of good. If you're going to pay for additional information, you basically would always make that decision first. All right. Other questions? Going once, going twice? You guys seem pretty happy tonight. Yeah? Okay. Well, we can go ahead and shut it down for tonight because I'm not seeing a lot of other questions. So happy to go ahead and let you guys go. I'm going to go ahead and shut down the online session, and then face-to-face I will be available to help you guys on individual questions.